Live. Just give it a second here, everybody. There we go. Okay, we are officially live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Speaker Spotlight. For those I haven't met before, my name is Lori. I am a business and personal brand success coach who helps freedom-loving coaches, consultants, and strategists to grow and scale sustainable location-independent businesses and personal brands. Whether they are a startup or in that scaling phase, we give them the support that they need to tap into their inner voice to create brands that attract. And today I am joined by Noeli Serna, the founding attorney of Serna Legal Services, a corporate law firm that offers Illinois and Wisconsin Latino-owned businesses and Latino entrepreneurs corporate legal services in both English and Spanish. Noeli's firm drafts, reviews, and negotiates contracts, works with clients to incorporate their businesses, and advises clients on their businesses' ongoing regulatory and legal obligations. Before starting her own law firm, Noeli worked as an in-house corporate counsel at International Manufacturing Company, where she counseled the business on a variety of corporate matters, such as commercial contracts and everyday legal questions. Prior to working as an in-house counsel, Noeli also practiced transactional banking law in the Chicago offices of two international law firms. Welcome, Noeli.
Hello. Hi, Lori. Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction.
Yeah, welcome. So I know that today's topic is one that we were just chatting behind the scenes here that everybody knows that they need to know more about, but a lot of people are not getting the help that they need. So I'm really excited. I think that the knowledge that you're going to share with people is going to be really just transformational, and protecting ourselves is so important. And it's not something that a lot of us think a lot about at the early stages in our businesses, especially. And that's really when we need to protect ourselves, because otherwise you get down the road and then when you actually need that help, you haven't gotten it, right?
Right. And then you need the lawyer down the line, unfortunately, for different reasons. But yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in, but I also like to start with a little bit of your story. And I know, I've talked to you before, so I know a little bit of the background of, what really inspired you to get into law, and specifically, helping these Latino business owners specifically. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what got you into this business in the first place.
Yeah, so I'll take it pretty far back. So my parents are immigrants from Mexico, but I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. And I think one of the foundational kind of transformational moments in my life is that my parents opened a small fast food restaurant when I was 5. So I grew up in the family restaurant. I grew up with small business owners around me, which I think is what ultimately led me into the kind of law that I practice today. But I knew very young. I saw an 8th grade graduation image where you write down where you see yourself when you're 30. And I wrote that I wanted to be a lawyer or a law teacher. And I was going to go to Harvard, which I did not go to Harvard, but I did become a lawyer. And I just knew that very young because I saw my dad working with an attorney when he was finally ready to scale his own business, incorporating it. And that's what I learned when I was a kid, was that a lawyer was there to help my parents' business. And ultimately, fast forward to today, after practicing for about 6 years for big companies, big international law firms, on multi-million-dollar deals, I decided I want to take these building blocks, my Spanish-speaking skills, my experience in a small entrepreneurial environment with my parents, and apply that now to, I think, business owners that especially need that need access to Spanish speakers, because I think there is much less access to that information in Spanish. And here I am working with that Latin business community and others, but that really is the primary focus of my practice now.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're able to do this, like I said, take it and do a lot of what you do remotely. Because as you know, that's something I'm very passionate about, so that you can do it on your terms and on the terms of those business owners. And I also think it's really amazing to have that backstory. My parents were definitely not entrepreneurs, but to have that example and that motivation behind it is really powerful. So thank you for sharing. So let's get into the meat and bones of things, as they say, right? And we'll talk about, kind of the elephant in the room, and that being, the importance of legally protecting your business, because a lot of people aren't doing this. So where do we even start?
Yeah, there are so many things we could talk about. And I'm going to start with a quick caveat that I'm here to give information, but of course, this should not be construed as legal advice as a good lawyer. But there are, I think, a couple of major pieces when you're starting your business to think about. One is your liability in terms of starting as a sole proprietor or just this, without incorporating at all. And what are the implications of that? So I'll touch on that briefly. The next, I think, for any business is intellectual property, right? How do you protect your secret sauce, what it is that you're putting out there to the world? And then another big piece, I think, are your contracts and how you're entering into agreements with a myriad of either customers, vendors, et cetera, that you're working with every day. So a lot of risks that come associated with those three categories. When I talk about incorporation, I think that's the first step for most business owners. You're ready to start your business and you're thinking, okay, how do I do it, right? I hear these terms like LLC, S Corp, C Corp. Right. And it's confusing, right? Because you're not sure what the difference is. You don't even know why you need that. Because technically, as soon as you start selling a service or selling a product, you will become a business owner in the eyes of the IRS and the state, right? You're a sole proprietor at that point. So at that point, you are taking on all the responsibility, all the debts, all the potential risks of your business as the business owner. And when we talk then about taking that step to incorporate and creating potentially an LLC, S Corp, et cetera, that's you taking the step as a business owner to silo the liabilities of your business from yourself as a business owner. So that's why they do it. You hear this term thrown around of, limiting your personal liability. And that's what a legal entity is doing for you, as long as you're following the rules and requirements for each of those entities. But that means that now if you have that legal entity, let's say, hopefully this would never happen, but the business is sued for some reason, something happens. Now, if you have that legal entity, somebody would be suing your business, not you as the business owner, which means that if they're going to collect on that lawsuit, they can't touch your personal assets, your bank account, your savings, your retirements. That is separate and aside from what your business is. So that's, I think, the biggest piece of why incorporating is important and why it protects you as a business owner.
Okay. I have a question, but I don't know if this is the right time to ask it around that, because you might get into like which type of business do we need. So let's maybe talk about that. How do people know what type of a business they do need to start?
That is a loaded question. So, and the favorite lawyer response is it depends, right? So it becomes an analysis of what your business is doing, what it's selling, what its goals are, because different legal entities will provide different kinds of, pros and cons. And another added piece, which I always emphasize, is that taxes are implied with all of this. You want to create ultimately the legal entity where you're paying the least amount of taxes according to the law, right? You want to do everything within the law, but there are different considerations. I will say that a lot of small to mid-sized business owners are very, they're really enthusiastic about LLCs. LLCs are one of the most popular. And S Corps are as well. And a lot of that comes down to how they're taxed, right? Because C corporations, which are your big Fortune 500, they're traded on the stock exchange, though they don't have to be. Those are, what's considered to be double taxed. So C corporations are taxed at the corporate business level and also at the personal level where you get dividends from your company. Whereas LLCs or S Corps, they're considered pass-through entities, which means you're just taxed at the personal income level. So the business itself may not be directly taxed. But again, there are a lot of caveats to that, but that tends to be the rationale for perhaps an LLC or an S Corp for a smaller business. But I will just want to reiterate that it depends, and it's super important that as you're making that decision, talk to a lawyer, talk to your accountant to make sure you're making the best choice for you, for your business, and for where you see it growing, right? Because if you're somebody that's looking for investors right away, you want to make that business grow because your vision is, I'm going to sell this for a pretty penny down the line. An LLC might not be the best option for you. Maybe a corporation may be the best option. So it really comes down to what your goals are as a business owner for that business.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. And I'm glad we answered that. And I know I'm going to also just want to say to those that are in our audience that are international, we are obviously, I'm from the U.S. Noeli is from the U.S., so we are referring to U.S. Situations and business entities. However, I think that a lot of what you say might be called something else in another country, and their laws might be slightly different, but it's going to be a very similar thing. The advice that we're talking about here and the topics that we're talking about are relevant. You just have to know the terms in your own country. So just want to say that for those that aren't in the US.
Yeah, different countries may have different entities too. So yeah, definitely this only applies to the US, but the concepts, like you say, could be similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Because business is business, and I think every country has some version of what we're talking about, which leads me to kind of like the next area that I know we want to dig into, and that's contracts. And I think in most countries there's some version of that. So let's talk about contracts and why we need them.
Contracts are so important, right? I think of contracts as a business owner in different buckets. So the big one being, if you're a service provider, you're selling products to somebody, you want contracts with your customers in place. I can't tell you how many times there have been emails where that's, the contract, or just handshakes or verbal exchanges where it's not in writing. And that can lead to a lot of problems because your contract, the idea there is that you're setting out the expectations and obligations of each party. You as a business owner, you're there to make money, right? That is what being a business owner is. So you want to make sure you get paid for what it is that you agreed to do. Absolutely. That should be in your contract. And that's what protects that source of revenue and payments to you as the business owner. So contracts are critical, whether it be with your customers or whether you receive contracts from others, like your vendors, your landlord sends you the commercial lease. People oftentimes, they receive these contracts. It has all this legal jargon. You're not sure what it really says, and they sign it without even diving into it or investing in their own business by getting an attorney to take a look. That could be very costly, right? There could be provisions in there that you end up losing a lot of money. Maybe you're now committed to a contract for X number of years, and there's a penalty if you want to get out of it earlier. So just a myriad of issues that could come up with contracts. So always recommend getting a lawyer to take a look at your contracts to make sure you're protected. And just know, you as a business owner, your responsibility is always to advocate for yourself, advocate for your business. And that's what negotiating a contract is, right? Don't be afraid if somebody tells you, this is our standard form, you can't make any changes to it. You're doing a disservice to yourself as a business owner if you take that at face value and don't take that extra step for yourself and your business.
Right. You have to feel good about whatever you're entering into. And if you don't enter into something, right? So I do have a question, and I think, this is, I don't know if you can answer it or not. But being that, our audience is largely, like I said, these digital entrepreneurs, and a lot of us are working across borders. And so contracts are something that people ask me about, like, well, having, let's say I'm hiring a virtual assistant, or a client from another country is hiring me to do work for them. Do I still need a contract?
Yes. The answer is always yes, absolutely. When I worked as in-house counsel, we had subsidiaries in Mexico and other countries. So we were doing business back and forth for different reasons. Always have a contract. When it comes to international contracts as well, or when you're contracting with international parties, the biggest thing, not biggest, but one of the important things in that contract is what law governs it, right? Or under what jurisdiction will a dispute will be resolved. So just be really diligent about seeing what that process would look like. Of course, if you're a US-based business and you're doing business with someone outside the US, advocate for U.S. law to govern. But that's a great circumstance where an attorney could help you navigate that as well.
Yeah, because I think, again, I hear from people a lot of times like, well, I don't do contracts because, I work primarily, I work with people from the Philippines. There's a lot of people in this online space that work with VAs and, sales teams and marketers from the Philippines. And I can't hold them accountable, so I don't bother doing contracts. So what are your thoughts on that?
The contract will hold both parties accountable. So that is what's holding people accountable, whether you're international or domestic, is your contract. So no, I would highly encourage to look into putting contracts in place, whether you're dealing domestically or cross-border. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Good. Thank you. Because again, I know that is one that comes up a lot. So I just wanted to touch on that one. So, and I know something else that you've touched on a few times too is intellectual property, which is also part of why we want contracts, right? To protect our own intellectual property. But how else do we go about protecting the work that we're doing?
Yeah, you're protecting the work and business, right? So one thing I want to, I want to throw a little advice while I'm here is that sometimes people forget that even your business's name, your logo, what you're putting out to the world, it is an asset. It is your intellectual property, right? Yeah. If you suddenly had to change the name of your business because somebody else has a trademark filed already for your business, that could set you back enormously, right? And sometimes business owners, especially as they're starting out, don't take that extra step to, before they actually register their business, go search on the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. They have a search function called TESS. You can see if anybody else in the country has filed a trademark application for the business name that you want to use. And if you see that someone has, then you have to think a little more critically about, does this person do the same kind of thing I do? Do they have a similar business? If yes, then maybe you need to pause and rethink the name you wanted to put out there. Because then they could ask you to stop using your business if they had a trademark application before you did. So that's one, I think, really critical point that business owners forget sometimes too.
So should business owners be trademarking their names?
I would always recommend putting a trademark for your name, for your logo, because I think, like I mentioned, those are some of your biggest assets, because that is what you're putting out there to the world. That is what your customers are searching for when they're looking for you online. So I would highly recommend it.
Yeah. So at what point do you think that people really need to do that? Because I know, like, again, as a business coach, especially, I see so many people coming into this business world that don't necessarily stick around. So at what point should they be making that decision to protect themselves in that way?
Yeah, and that's complicated. I don't know if these people decide not to stick around because they change their minds, or
I think it's mostly because they realize that it's more than they bargained for, to be honest. I think it's hard. Entrepreneurship, it's a lot of work, it's money, it's time. And I think a lot of people get into it because they like the idea of like, oh, I want to work for myself. I don't want to work for someone else. And then when they realize all that actually goes into it, or they're not getting the results immediately, then they back out of it. So, some people go in thinking I'm fully vested, but then 6 months down the line, they're like, this is not at all what I thought. Like, I have had clients, they've hired me to help them with their business. And then they end up all they really wanted was kind of the freedom that came from that. But then they end up finding like a remote job that gives them freedom. And they're like, I don't want to do the business anymore. I found what I wanted. Because a trademark, I mean, if I remember correctly, isn't it like, it's like over $10,000, right?
No.
What am I thinking of then?
I don't know, what would be a liquor license? That would be like much.
So it's not that much. Okay,
it's not that much. I would say the filing fee, I think, is under $1,000 right now for a trademark. It is not. It's not exorbitant. I think it's a worthwhile business expense. And the question when to do it, you don't know, right? If you're going to be that business owner that's going to, follow through or stop at some point. So I always recommend, as soon as you're putting yourself out there in the world as a business, as soon as you're starting to do services, trademark it. I would say as soon as you start publicly being in business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that hopefully is the point at which most people know, like, yeah, I'm doing this. Like once you like put yourself out there to the world and your friends and family and you admit like, hey, I am a business owner, then you're probably yourself in.
Yes, agreed. Yes. And it is affordable. There are attorneys that do that work at a fixed price basis. Our law firm does it. So yeah, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it's good to know, guys, again, yes, you work primarily with the Spanish speaking community, but if you don't speak Spanish, obviously Noeli does speak English. And if you're in Illinois and Wisconsin, especially, she can probably help you.
Trademark work is federal, so we can actually do trademarking.
You can do that in any state. Even better. Even better. Awesome. So what else, what I guess kind of like words of wisdom would you give people when it comes to protecting their business?
Yeah, so I think staying on that topic of intellectual property, you mentioned it, you're absolutely right that in your contracts, make sure that you're protecting the services, you're protecting anything that's proprietary to your business, right? Because maybe a business has developed this amazing system or this very specific to them way to do something. That could be something that you trademark, you patent, copyright, etc. But at the very least, you want in your contracts for it to be very clear who owns what here, right? And while you, as my customer, may be able to use some of what I'm doing, you can only do so if I license you to do that, right? So just making sure you have the right limitations and protections to protect your intellectual property at all times. Other words of wisdom, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think there are a lot of attorneys, accountants, professional service providers that are happy to have conversations. They offer free consultations to at least put you at ease about what the best next steps are for yourself. So don't think just because you're talking to an attorney at the beginning that you're somehow committed to hiring an attorney. No, you're just doing the best you can for your own business and to protect it. And maybe you discover that after that conversation, maybe you do need legal services. So now you have at least a connection that you can move forward with as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And, on that note too, I want to also just take this opportunity to say, if you, want that ongoing kind of reassurance too, there's other ways that you can get it. Like for instance, signing up for Noeli's, like newsletters and email lists where she's giving updates and tips and those kinds of things. Right. And, I think, you even do like, free webinars and stuff sometimes, correct?
I do. Yeah. And since you mentioned that, I do have a very detailed webinar in English and Spanish. So August 23rd will be English, where we talk about everything, not everything, but a lot that comes associated with incorporating your business. So we go into more detail on legal entities, on what that process looks like. And while it's geared toward Illinois businesses, the concepts and the processes, they really are very similar throughout the country. So it would benefit most businesses to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I will say, for those that are on my email list, we are going to be sending out an email so that you can easily opt in to Noeli's newsletter. And so you can get the information on that upcoming webinar and as well as other events and tips that she has. So please watch for that email here in the next couple of days. Otherwise, if you're like, yeah, I want to know this now, I want to sign up now, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, so I am very active on social media. So my handle is for all, for all social media content, it's Serna Legal Services. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I've been using TikTok recently. Yeah, it's been fun. But I put almost every day some kind of a legal tip, some information, and it's all primarily geared toward business owners. So follow us and there will be plenty of information that we circulate there.
Awesome. And, again, too, like you can connect with her on any of these platforms. So if you don't want to wait for the email from us, go ahead, reach out to her on social media, grab her links, sign up for the newsletter, or just send a DM. And I'm sure that you'll be happy to send them the links as well. Because it is really, really important, guys, that you do protect yourselves in this process as entrepreneurs, because as we all know, there's many, many, many of us out there, and you see it all the time, in in the Facebook world, especially with people like I have friends that are very successful entrepreneurs where they've said, like, I literally saw someone using my exact words. Like, they are literally copying and using it in their own groups and like doing the exact same things as me. So it's happening because people think you're not watching. So
Right.
it's happening. Protect yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, okay, well, this has been amazing. Thank
Oh.
you so much, Noeli. You are a wealth of information, and everyone, again, please protect yourself, and following people like Noeli. That is the first step that you can take to really just being more knowledgeable when it comes to the legal side of business. Because yes, we're all doing this because we want to help people and we enjoy what we're doing, but we have to be aware of those other parts that could creep up into our world. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thanks
for being here, Noeli.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a fabulous conversation, and everyone else. So connect with Noeli, and in terms of us, if you are ready to really grab your own voice, find an aligned and authentic strategy that works for you so that you can live that life that you desire, please reach out to myself and or my team to talk about how we can help you to get there faster with more confidence using your voice in a way that is authentically you. So thank you again, Noeli, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And yeah, we will be back. Well, actually, no, we will not be back next week, everybody. I will say that here. I am having surgery next week, so we will see you in 2 weeks. And thank you again, Noeli. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.